Awesome. Great. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Anu, also Tomlola Biodun from Tatiana Consulting, and I'm happy to be anchoring this session today with the amazing Dan Kefa from the Ohio State University Fisher College of Business. And our webinar is going to be on crafting a standout MBA essay. And please feel free to ask questions. You can put your questions in the chat box. If you actually want to come off mute, please just make sure you raise your hand so that it can be orderly and I can call you as soon as it's your time. Just don't come off mute so that the meeting is not disrupted. Before we go into details of the webinar, I would like to share a few things about Tatiana Consulting, and then we'll get Dan to introduce himself. Okay, I think the speakers are introducing themselves first before we get into details of Tatiana Consulting, which I think is great and that makes absolute sense. So my name is Tumola Abiodun. A lot of you know me as Anu, but my name, my government name is Tumola Abiodun, and I'm the founder of Tatiana Consulting. I graduated from the Ohio State University Fisher College of Business in 2019 with my MBA, and I have been working at Microsoft for the last 5 years. I started as a product marketing manager, and currently I'm a senior product manager in the Microsoft Security Organization. We have been for about 2 years and some months, so total of 5 years. I also founded Tatiana Consulting 5 years ago, so this has been my brainchild, the base of my experiences in business school, coming to business school, and my drive to ensure that other people do not make the same mistakes that I have made, and ensure that people are actually prepared and ready to take the next level of opportunities that they might get. Because at the end of the day, a lot of opportunities are just one-time opportunities, and you don't get to have them more than once. Well, that is said, I would like Dan to introduce himself.
Yeah, and thanks so much, Tommy. So yeah, first and foremost, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I really enjoy doing informational webinars like this. So a little bit about myself. My name is Dan Kiefer. I'm currently serving as our interim director of recruiting and admissions for MBA programs at The Ohio State University Fisher College of Business. A little bit about myself and my background, and I'll try to keep this not super long, but a little bit about myself. I'm a graduate of Ohio State. I first arrived to Ohio State when I was an 18-year-old kid many, many years ago, around 2010. Had a great undergraduate experience and graduated with my undergraduate education in 2014. Then I immediately took a job with our College of Dentistry doing recruiting and admissions for our DDS or dentistry program, I should say. And I did that for about a year and a half. And the remainder of my time I've had at Ohio State has been spent in the graduate business area. So for the past 8.5 years, I've been working on our specialized graduate master's programs. A few years ago, I transitioned over to our MBA programs, our full-time program, our working professional program. So I've managed all of the graduate programs that are coming out of my office at one point in time. So I like to think I'm fairly knowledgeable about, crafting applications, just the graduate business education world, I should say. In terms of just kind of my day-to-day, I spend a ton of time reading files. I serve on our admissions committees. I work closely with student financial aid for our full-time MBA program. Basically everything from the moment a candidate expresses an interest all the way up to them starting the program on the first day. Everything that kind of happens in that window indirectly or directly will fall to me. So, been at Ohio State for over 10 years, have a degree from Ohio State. Have read thousands of graduate applications for multiple different programs. So really excited to be here and share any insights that I have, but that's just a little bit about me and my background.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dan. It was great learning about your background. And I know everybody on the call, you've heard what Dan has said. So please, if you have any questions, do not be shy. I always say that the first way to actually know and be sure that you are prepared to take up the rigors of the MBA program is by being bold first and being able to ask questions, right? The program is very, very intense. And if you're not bold enough, if you're not able to ask questions, then I'm concerned about how you will actually survive the intense rigors of the program, because the program is a whole lot about asking questions and participating in class activities. So please feel free to ask questions. There are no stupid questions at all, because you think that, don't think that, oh, everybody here probably is very, very smart, so they will know something. It's totally fine, right? Nobody's an island. So please feel free to ask questions and we would answer to the best of our knowledge. Okay, so why Technical Consulting exists? I don't know if I've shared this with everybody here. There are a few people on the call that I think have been on our webinars previously. If not, I would like to share again why we exist. So Technical is born out of my experience and my desire and drive to ensure that people are ready for the next level of the opportunities that they might get. What I have seen in my professional career and even personally is that people get a whole lot of opportunities, but they are not ready. Unfortunately, sometimes people just have one opportunity, just that one opportunity. And when that opportunity is lost, it's lost forever. There are a few people that have been really very lucky and they've had opportunities twice, three times, maybe by stroke of luck. But don't you want to be that person that you are very ready, you're very prepared for that one opportunity that you get? Right now, the world is insanely competitive. If you think you're smart, the next person beside you is also really, really very smart. So how do you make yourself stand out? The only way you can do that is by preparation, is by preparing. Most times you see people and you think that, oh, these people are just naturally really good. These people are just very intelligent. These people are just very smart. But what you don't know is that these people actually prepared. These people actually study, right? There is really no self-made, there's really no I wouldn't say self-made. There are a lot of people that actually they put in a lot of effort. Yes, what I was trying to say is there isn't somebody that just wakes up and, oh, the person is just good. No, that's the effort that the person has put in, the person's parents have put in, stakeholders have put in. So please don't think that some people are just very good because they're good. Once you put in effort, you would see results. And that's why Tatinal Consulting exists, to help you and nurture you in the right direction. Because also what you don't want to do is put in effort in the wrong direction. It's actually even better for you not to even go anywhere than to be going the wrong way. So we need to make sure that we are preparing you to go the right way in the right direction. Now, one thing I need you to know is Technical Consulting is a very, very intense, extremely intense group. So what I call intense is Technical Consulting is like a school, right? It's really like a school. So we're not we do it for you, where we help you, we teach you how to do it for yourself, because it's my desire that as many people that we impact can also go ahead to impact other people in their lives, right? I'm always very excited when I get somebody that I've coached also coaching other people, because that's the only way we can actually scale in the world, right? How many people can Technical Consulting actually coach? So at the end of the day, I'm not trying to do everything for you. I'm ensuring that you know how to do things by yourself and you can also coach other people in the right direction. So if you're just, oh, I want people to just do it for me, a lot of people just come and say, oh, I just want to have this. And I'm just like, well, that sounds nice. I want to have many things too, but I can't just have those things. I have to work for those things. So Technical Consulting is where you will actually work. And if you work, you would see the results and the impact it's going to have on your career, right? Not just your MBA career, but generally your career as a whole. So just a few of our success stories. I share these slides every time. And I think we actually need to change up the slides because we have a huge, huge, huge number of logos that should be here, but just a few of them. We have clients that have gotten into almost all of the schools in the top 50 for the US News ranking. And for most of the Fortune 500, Fortune 100, Fortune 1 companies, one company, Fortune 5, Fortune 10, we have clients across all of those companies. And all of these clients have stayed very, very dedicated. They have been very diligent and they've been very resilient to actually getting the results that they desire. So a few things about our offerings. Technical Consulting actually does offer services for graduate admissions and graduate career services. For the purpose of this webinar, we'll be focusing on graduate admissions, specifically crafting an essay specifically tailored to the Fisher College of Business. And we have our Fisher College of Business director here who will be helping us answer some questions. But a few things, we do offer one-on-one MBA admissions coaching. And most importantly, we do offer Admit MBA Group Boot Camp. This is an initiative that we started this year. This is because I strongly believe in the power of community. Being in a class with like minds, people like you, actually fosters a lot of innovation, and it actually fosters people to be very resilient because you see other people doing the same things that you are doing, and you're also very excited to get to do it with them. So that's why we started the cohort system where you can be in a group. You can actually make lifelong friends, even from the admissions process throughout the MBA process and after that. A few of our successes, we have a good number of our clients who've gotten full rights to business schools. Most of our admitted clients, 100% of our admitted clients have gotten 50% to 100% scholarships. And from our career perspective, 70% of our MBA career clients are able to get MBA internship interviews before October. So that's a huge success for us. And we can't wait to actually hear more success stories from our superstars out there. So we're starting with the essays. So the way we are going to do this, it's going to be very interactive. So please feel free to ask questions, raise your hand, and type your questions in the chat box. Please feel free to do all of that. Now we're starting with the importance of an MBA essay. Think about your MBA essay as storytelling. For a lot of you, you probably have applied to other graduate programs, and most of other graduate programs just ask for things like personal statement. The MBA program is not like that, particularly the MBA program from the Fisher College of Business. You're trying to hear your own story. Like, what is your story? Because at the end of the day, you don't just wake up and say, oh, I want to do an MBA. And if you've actually attended a couple of our other webinars, you would have seen that the MBA is actually a very diverse program. And not just diversity in cultures, but diversity in experiences and backgrounds. So you see people that are coming from different walks of life. They're nurses, they're doctors, they're engineers, people that are music teachers, people that studied arts, and they're coming to do an MBA. So if you can see that there's so much diversity for backgrounds and experiences in the MBA program, then why exactly do you want to come for the MBA? Why is the MBA very, very key to you? You need to be able to think about that. So your MBA essay is very big on your own personal brand, right? So you need to think about it from you are selling your brand, you're selling your person. How do you sell your person in a way that the MBA admissions team wants you in their program? Right? It's very, very important that you do that. And yes, I'm sure you're wondering, well, they have my resume, and my resume actually highlights my achievements. Yes, your achievements necessarily all the time doesn't tell your story, really, because a lot of people have great achievements in maybe chemistry, for example, or biology or music, but probably they want to do something in business. Their resume doesn't tell that story. Their resume doesn't tell the why they want to do something in business or the why they want to do an MBA. Their resume gives an idea of their past work from a professional standpoint. It doesn't talk about their future goals, and it doesn't talk about other interests that they actually do have. While some people's resumes have like additional information where they say, oh, I'm a chess player or I love music, it doesn't really tell like a comprehensive, cohesive story. So see your essay as an addition to your resume that provides the full picture. And that's why the MBA application process includes resume, recommendation letters, different types of essays, because they're trying to get different things to see things from like the broader picture, right? And your MBA essay, one thing about it, it provides you an opportunity to stand out. Now, think about all of you very amazing people here. And most of you here are from West Africa. So imagine if you and the person beside you have the same experience, the same background from your resume, you have the exact same thing, right? And hold on, Caroline, I'll call you. You have the exact same thing. You have the same background. You have everything. How exactly do you stand out? How is Anu different from Caroline, different from Esther? Your essay is what makes you stand out in that way. So take 1 minute pause to hear from Caroline. So Caroline, you have a question.
Yes. Hello, Tommy. Hello, Dan. So while you were speaking, you mentioned about, using our personal story. So is it that when we are writing our essays, we shouldn't include our current work experience, since that is also like part of our achievements?
Oh, no, no, not at all. That's not what I meant. So your personal story includes your current work achievement because that's personal to you. So don't see, a lot of times people see personal as everything that doesn't happen, that happens outside of work. But that's not it. Something personal to you is everything about you, including what happens outside of work and within work. That's what makes you stand out as a
Yeah.
person. So yes, please write about your current experience. Yes, Dan.
Yeah, no, I was going to say Tommy's exactly correct there. I think that to piggyback off that point, I think that I would recommend talking about that almost more so than maybe talking about something that you did 5 or 6 years ago because it's more applicable now. So, I mean, in thinking of, your personal statement, what you're involved in, what your passions are, and I'll give, my kind of overview and tips here in a moment, but I think that that's a huge thing not to overlook because that tells us where you're at right now. And for many of you, you might have been working as maybe an engineer or in life sciences or teaching, and you've only been in business for a little bit. So that
Mm-hmm.
little bit and what you're doing right now is super important. So I would say talk about it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, yeah, that's you need to talk about it a lot. And it also tells you a story about how you plan to get to where you want to get to, which is like your immediate short-term goals and your long-term goals. Because at the end of the day, even if your goals are a little different from where you are right now, it's literally a journey. So there has to be some form of connection, right? So yes. So our next slide, we'll be talking about like key element of an essay for you to stand out. I'll just talk about this briefly before I go to the next slide, and that Dan will be helping us with. So the first one I would say is authenticity. You need to be very authentic about your essay. A lot of times people just plagiarize essays. They tell their friend, oh, send me the essay that you wrote the other time. And then they just change their names, change a few things. Some other people also write like different essays about other things, right? So probably pick essays from ChatGPT and just tell ChatGPT, oh, I'm an MBA candidate, prospective MBA candidate applying to this particular school, write an essay for me. That's not authentic enough, right? And authenticity talks about you personally. The reason why you need to be authentic is there are so many people that have the same backgrounds as you have, that have similar experiences, similar exposures to you. But even with the same background, there are always very distinct experiences that tie to you as a person. There are no two people that are exactly the same thing. And this is where authenticity in your MBA essay actually comes in because you have to be very, very, very authentic in your MBA essay. So it has to be something about you, something that if I read, I should not be able to read it from somebody else. Now, there are people that have very similar goals, but how they have thought about those goals are going to be very, very different. So please do not plagiarize your essays. Do not just go copy essays that have been written by GPTs and just go copy and paste it. Of course, we have a lot of technology tools out there that would help you. Now, keyword is help, not you copying everything that the thing has said and just taking that as your essay. No, you need to be able to have a genuine story to tell. And then the structure. Your essay must follow very specific structures. Now, depending on the type of essay, so there are different types of essays, right? You have like your long and short term goals essays, which most schools have. I believe that's the first essay for the Fisher College of Business, where you have, oh, what are your long and short term goals, and how would the Fisher MBA program help you achieve these goals? Now, look at that question specifically and look at how it's been asked. And you need to make sure that your structure actually follows the way it's been asked. Right? So they're asking for your short and your long-term goals, and they're asking for how the Fisher MBA program will help you achieve those goals. So you need to think through, oh, what are my short-term goals? What are my long-term goals? I think we'll talk about it in the next slide. And then how would Fisher help you achieve it? So follow that specific structure. And then when they're asking you questions on like, oh, diversity or initiative or leadership or failure, you need to follow a specific structure to say, okay, if a leadership question is asked, what are they asking for? They want to know a time that I actually took, I would say, initiative to lead. But as a leader, what's expected of you? A lot of times when people tell leadership stories, they tell stories of just themselves doing things. If there are no people doing it with you, if you're not supporting other people, if you're not coaching other people, if you're not bringing people with you, then that is not a leadership story. That's just you doing work. And that doesn't count as a leadership story. So you need to really fully understand the question and follow the structure. Then the last one here is clarity of purpose. You need to have a purpose. And this is what I always say. What problem are you trying to solve? There must always be a why. Always a why all the time. If you are doing things and there is no why, then I struggle to understand what exactly are we doing here. As an MBA, as somebody who would be a leader, a global leader, somebody that is a prospective Fisher MBA candidate, it's important that you have a why because you're going to be in the real world where you'll be asked questions about what your purpose is. So imagine you meet a recruiter, you meet somebody out there in the MBA program and they're asking questions about your goals. What do you say? Even if I meet you today and I just ask you a question, oh, why do you want to have an MBA? I don't expect that you have everything crisp, but I expect that you have a why. So always think deep and say, why do I want to have an MBA? What problem am I trying to solve? Always think deep about the problem you're trying to solve. Now, a lot of us have different problems. Like, so when it comes to problems, especially people from Africa, problem is plenty. I know. But you need to think about the problem that aligns a lot with you, your experience, and a problem that you can actually solve. A lot of times we think about our problem from just a huge perspective that it's not even possible for the government to actually even solve this problem in 8 years. So how can you possibly solve it? So you need to break it down into something really tiny that you can actually solve for, start small, and then it can grow. Your solution can grow. So you need to have the clarity of that purpose. Now, crafting your personal narrative. I think I spoke a little bit about this in the last key element slide where I spoke about finding your unique purpose, reflecting on your why. Now I would now hand this over to Dan to say that when you are thinking through or where you're assessing like candidates, students who would do really well in the MBA program, from an essay perspective, what's that thing that makes a candidate who will do really well in the program or who has huge chances of really getting in and succeeding? What are the, I would say, what are the anchors that the person will include in their essays, right? That would make the person distinct from other candidates.
Yeah, that's a great segue, Tommy. And I can go ahead and throw something into the chat here. I think it's just helpful, and I'll try to keep this vague enough so I hit upon many different universities, but I'll certainly be phrasing a lot of what we talk about today, specifically at Fisher. But I know for some of you in the room, you might be targeting other MBA programs as well. So I'm going to try to keep this as broad so you could apply this really to any program. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and throw kind of our essay overview into the chat here. And if you scroll down a little bit, it's between resume and two references. You click on that, it'll open up. So I wanted to throw that first. But to Tommy's point, I think finding your unique story is certainly the first. I like that it's here because that's what I always tell candidates. First and foremost, let's cover the high level things before we go ahead and talk a little bit more about specific tips and tricks. To Tommy's point earlier, the first thing that I always will tell a student to do is look at the parameters in which you're going to be kind of limited in writing your essay. So for us, we're one single-sided page, 11 size point font minimum. Many schools are different. Some schools might have a 12-point font minimum. Some schools might have an unlimited amount that you can write. Some schools may be longer, shorter. So, to Tommy's point earlier, don't just make one essay and copy and paste it for 10 programs over and over and over again, because that might not hit upon what they're looking for. It might be too long. It might be too short. It might not be in the right format. So the first thing I always tell candidates to do is go there. Second thing I tell candidates, read the topic. and be sure to answer that fully. And it's a funny example, but this is the example that I give to candidates, sometimes. But our essay prompt at Fisher is, what is your short-term career goal? What's your long-term career goal? And then how and why is a degree from Fisher going to help you achieve those goals? Um, that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second here, but I'm not asking you about your relationship to Ohio State. I'm not asking you about why you love Columbus. So it's very easy sometimes to see that and to get super excited about a school, whether it's Ohio State, whether it's Harvard, whether it's Stanford, and just say, oh my God, I want to talk about everything that I know about the school, or I want to talk about everything that I plan on getting involved there. But be sure that you're answering what the school and what our program is asking of you. Because if I asked you what your favorite food was and you responded with your favorite movie, it could be a great answer, but it's not what I'm asking you, right? So that's a huge tip I would give as well. To get back into Tomi's point, into terms that things that I look at and things that really stand out to me, I really value and I really look at the amount of research that somebody has done to our program, right? And that would be a huge tip I would give you for any MBA program that you're applying to. Some MBA programs are 4 semesters, some are 3 semesters, some is an internship between year 1 and year 2, some you do the internship while in the program. I speak very generally here in vague, but most admissions officers and most admissions directors want to see, hey, I know specifically and exactly how your program is set do for me, the format, because that shows us, hey, this person knows what they're getting into, right? You want to make this unique for all the programs that you're applying to, because everyone is different. If you apply to the program at the Fisher College of Business and say, hey, I'm really looking to do a 1-year MBA program and this is a great fit. Well, we're a 2-year MBA program. So that shows me that was a copy and paste from another school. You know what I mean? So just do that research there. Another thing I think is in thinking of career goals and what it is that you're wanting to accomplish, we don't expect it to be so specific that, hey, I want to be a product manager at Procter and Gamble and I want to work in Cincinnati, right? That's a super specific thing. But what we're looking for there is, okay, well, are you wanting to do consulting? Are you wanting to do supply chain or ops? Are you wanting to do accounting or finance? I think it's a very, very important thing for any MBA program, not just Fisher, to know at least some options and some interest leading into the program that you can explore, versus saying, I know that I just want an MBA to get a good job and I'll figure it out once I get there. You do not want to say that, whether it's Fisher or any MBA program. You're going to want to have some idea of what it is that you're trying to do, some backup industries, some tentative job titles, maybe a long list of companies that you've researched and that you'd be willing to work at could be helpful as well. But you don't want to get into your interview, you don't want to get into your personal statement and just say, I really want to get a high paying job, or I would be open to anything. We want to see that you've done some research to make sure that for us, it's a good fit, both ways, right? Because this would be another tip I would give everybody. A lot of the times in an interview and a lot of the times in the essay and a lot of like those personal touches when you're applying to MBA program, it's just as much of you figuring out if that school is a good fit for you as it is for the school figuring out, would this be a good fit for us to take you in? Can we give you something that you want to do, right? The example that I would give there would be, if you really want to get into like, sports broadcasting or like journalism, you might want to do a master's of journalism or a master's of sports management instead of an MBA. And if you write about that in your essay, we can identify that and then guide you to something better that it is that you want to do. So that's why it's also important to be very honest as well. And then the other things, that the final thing, I don't want to take up too much time here, but the final tip and trick that I would give here, the research on Fisher, the research on what it is that you want to do. I think another thing too is like your research as the institution at large, right? Have you looked at student organizations? Have you looked at maybe places to live? Have you looked at maybe what you would do outside of the classroom as well? That would be another good tip, because every school offers different clubs and organizations and different programming activities. Most of your time in an MBA program, whether it's at Fisher, whether it's at Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, most of your time is actually going to be spent outside of the classroom in collaborative projects and with student organizations. So have you done research there to say, hey, I want to do this program. This is my career goals. This is what it is that I want to learn. But when I'm not in class, this is some stuff that I would do as well. I think that's another big tip I would have too. So
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Dan. That was really
yeah,
great. Thank you.
yeah.
I'm going to actually highlight more on your own research in the next slide. But before we go in there, I want to think through again the why. Now, remember what Dan has mentioned about you need to think through like, okay, why exactly are you coming to this school, right? And you need to be a little bit very specific. I know that sometimes you're like, oh, maybe you're undecided, but even if you're undecided, even if goals evolve and change, at least as of now, when you are writing your essays, you need to have something in mind, right? So why you might not be as specific as, oh, you want to work in Procter& and Gamble for in Cincinnati, you can be more of, oh, I want to work in the FMCG space. I want to work in the energy space. I want to work in technology, right? It's very, very important for you to be able to do that. But most importantly, I would like you to be able to include the why. The reason I'm doing this is, oh, you used to be an accountant and you just wake up and say, I want to work in product management. Why? If I'm reading your essay, I need to know why you want to do that. Like, what problem are you trying to solve? What gaps do you have right now in your entire profile and your experience that cannot be solved by the background that you have? And how exactly will product management solve that for you? What do you want to learn in product management? After your career in product management as a short-term goal, where will it lead you to? So especially people that don't have like, oh, I'm just continuing in particular direction that I've been all this while, you need to have a why. And also for people that are also continuing in the direction that they've been before, which is, oh, well, maybe I used to be an accountant and I just want to be a finance manager. Now that also makes me think, so why are you coming all the way from an MBA to do that? You're already in a career path that allows you to do that easily. So there has to be a why you are having an MBA and how you just continuing in a finance manager role with an MBA will help with your long-term goals. So you need to be able to think through that really, really well, right? It's important that you're able to do that. So your why, the problem you're trying to solve, connecting it to your long and short-term goals is very, very, very important. Now, when you're now thinking through your why, we bring it back to research and personalization. I know Dan has been really great with saying, oh, for other schools, but me, I'm very, very big on Fisher. So I'm going to be talking a lot about Fisher today. This is for Fisher right now. If you're interested in attending a school, particularly Fisher, how much research have you done? And when I ask people about research and about networking, a lot of times people see networking from a, well, I just want to maybe get a fee waiver or no. First of all, you even want to know if this school is a good fit for you. You want to know if this school actually has all of the resources that aligns with your short and long-term goals, right? Fisher is big on entrepreneurship. They're big on innovation. Fisher has very, very specific things. For example, the Global Applied Project, the things that are so specific to Fisher. And you need to figure out, okay, these things that are specific to Fisher, do they align with my goals and what I want to achieve? Right. And the example where Dan spoke about you being very specific. Some people are very specific about the company they want to work, while for some of you are more generic. Now, I want you to go deeper into that research. I've seen a couple of essays where students include names of companies that do not traditionally take international students. If you're an international student and you are interested in the post-MBA world, you should do research to know, does this company actually take an international student? So FMCGs, for example, generally Procter& Gamble, Johnson and Johnson do not take international students for MBA leadership roles. Please, I did not say they don't take international students at all for MBA leadership roles. So if you're writing your essay and your essay is hinged on you getting into FMCG, then that can be really very confusing for the schools because how do they want to help you achieve this goal, considering that you're an international student? So you need to know what companies actually would hire me as an international student. How do I align those companies to my short-term goals? Instead of you coming up with companies that are just very, just generic, that do not take international students. And then if that's where you are so focused on, you want to do FMCG, you want to do FMCG, and a lot of FMCGs don't take international students for MBA leadership roles, then that leads you in a limbo of, oh, the school is like, what do I do with this person? Because at the end of the day, the school wants you to succeed. And you've already come with a story of your goals. They want you to achieve those goals. So if they take you and that's actually all the goal you want to achieve, they can't help you achieve the goal. So you need to make sure that whatever you are including in your essay is something that the school can actually help you achieve. Now, going deeper into doing research of the school, it's not just about checking online. I tell people, talking to alums. Talking to alums will help you understand how the MBA program has prepared the alum or is helping the alum achieve their post-MBA goals. If somebody speaks to me today, I can easily tell them about, oh, the things that I learned from Fisher, the values that I've learned from Fisher that still keeps me grounded till today. A current student will tell you about how the courses or things that they are doing, the innovative programs that are doing right now, is helping them stay grounded in school. The admissions team will tell you about things that will possibly excite students about the school. So you're getting perspectives from different areas, right? And those perspectives play into the essays that you are going to write, right? Because if you're somebody that wants to achieve something in the long term, right, and you've seen an alum actually doing that, you've spoken to an alum, it gives you some form of, I would say, comfort. There's no guarantee with anything anyways in the world, but it gives you some form of comfort to actually know that, oh, if this alum has been able to achieve it, and the alum is able to achieve it through the support of Fisher and through the knowledge and experiences that the person has gained at Fisher, that means I definitely can do it. So those are things that you can include in your essays, right? To show that, oh, the alum is thinking in this direction. This is actually the direction I plan to take in a couple of years, right? And if this alum is able to achieve success here and attribute this success to Fisher, that means it's something that I can do. And then you should not be generic. A lot of times people just say things like, oh, small classroom size, small classroom size. Do you know how many MBA programs have small classroom sizes? I don't know. So many MBA programs have small classroom sizes. If you say you like MBA programs with medium classroom sizes or large classroom sizes, there are so many that do have that. So how exactly does that affect you? And how is that very distinct? So a combination of webinars, speaking to different people, right? And actually doing research on the school helps. Then finally, the values of the school and the culture. You need to understand the values of the school. There are some schools that have values on paying it forward, for example. If you know that this is the value that a lot of times they have mentioned in webinars and workshops, you have seen it, your essay must talk about that particular value. If your essay doesn't talk about that value, I'm not saying you won't get into the program, but when they are ranking people, you definitely not be ranked the highest. Because at the end of the day, schools want people that their values align. Just the same way you would want to get into a program that your value aligns with, a school will want to take candidate that their values align with theirs. So it's very, very, very important that you need to think through of all of the values that exist. What are the top 3 values, top 2 values that this school is very, very passionate about? What are the top 3 values Fisher actually holds very, very important to them? How exactly can I replicate or reflect those 3 values in my essays? Very important that you do that. Now, tailoring each essay. Now, this is more on different schools. I think Dan has mentioned it. Don't take a Fisher essay and just go dump it for another school. Question, very different. Values, very different. Now, all schools have leadership values, collaboration values, of course. However, the way schools rank a lot of their values are different. So what comes top, right? And when you are writing the essay for a specific school, what comes top should be what to be included in the essay, right? And then generic statement. I would throw this out to a lot of the West Africans here. I totally understand a lot of people may have gone through struggles in their life. I get it. But the reality is most people lived average basic lives. You don't need to tell a sub story about how you walked 20 miles. I know you did not walk 20 miles. Maybe your parents did, but I personally know you did not walk 20 miles. So no need for sub story. You don't need to tell a sub story to be able to get compassion. You don't need to tell a sub story. You don't need to have experienced hardship to be empathetic towards people that are in hardship. So no need for any of those sub stories. Because once I read it, like I read essays and I see the student, I'm like, you went to Corona. What do you mean you walked 20 miles? Like, I know you. Like, there is no way you walk 20 miles. No need for any of those kind of stories. So you need to be sure that you are not telling like sad stories that are not true. While some people actually do have those sub stories that are, some people actually had like bad experiences. I am not diminishing that. But if you did not have any bad experience, no need to lie. Like, it's not necessary. What you don't know, the lie is going to catch up with you. Um, I know a few people mention things like, oh, they lost a parent here, they did this. And at the person's graduation, somebody was like, oh, I thought you said you lost this person. Person's like, oh, you need to talk about how after the loss of this parent, the parent was literally at the graduation. Trust me, people would remember. You don't want to put yourself in that kind of awkward position. So if something bad did not happen to you, you don't have to say it happened to you. Please do not do that. Now, I think we spoke a little bit about like the structure. So I'll just go through this like one minute. You need to hook your readers. Very important that something engaging. At the end of the day, you need to be a storyteller. And the reason why it's important to be a storyteller is you get into business school, you're going to be telling a lot of stories because you're having MBA internship interviews, full-time interviews, you're telling several stories. So how do you hook people, right? Tell stories about how you even found out about the problem you're trying to solve. What I don't like when people write is just, oh, I want to solve a problem with poverty. First of all, that's a very broad problem and you cannot solve it to start with. But even if you go deeper, how did you even figure out that was something solvable? What personal or professional experience led you to that? It's important that you actually do have that in your introduction, right? It's important that you have that. And then including the body, basically you're talking about, oh, this is the experience that led me to this problem I'm trying to solve. This is the problem I'm trying to solve. This is the solution that I envision. This is where I am right now from a career perspective. These are the gaps I have right now with my career journey. This is how the Fisher MBA program will help me bridge the gap that I currently have with my career journey and my experience to the problem that I'm trying to solve. These are the very specific values and things about the Fisher program that will actually do help me excel. And then something a lot of people always miss out is you cannot just take, take, take. What is your mission to actually give, right? How do you stay committed to the Fisher program? Even if it is one line or a phrase, how do you plan to pay it forward, right? You need to be able to include things like that. And then logical flow. A lot of times people don't know how to do this. I can't read like 3 paragraphs and your 3 paragraphs are just isolated. It needs to flow. But don't think too deep. Don't think too, I would say, don't be too harsh on yourself. Once you start writing your essays, start slowly. And then by the time you iterate it a lot of times, the logical flow would come. Now, I think I will leave this to Dan to talk about what are common mistakes that you have seen a lot of candidates actually make that has been very, very bad for them from an application standpoint or from an essay standpoint.
Oh yeah. This is a really great question, and I actually just got one in the chat from Iomide, so I can kind of address this now. I was getting ready to type it out.
Yeah.
The first thing that I'll cover here is actually that question. So ignoring word count and guidelines. You know, once again, I'll speak kind of vague, but then I'll tell you how we would do it at Fisher too. Generally speaking, I would say really try to abide by the word count. You know, if you get to like 511 and the word count is 500, see if there's just a few filler words that you could cut down to just fit it into that. I would suggest doing that. You know, now the reality is at Fisher, if you write 505 words and we say, hey, 500 word limit, is that
Mm-hmm.
automatically going to remove you from the pool? No. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But that being said, for us, the bigger thing with us is it's, well, one page, right? So one page, 11-point font. If it's
Mm-hmm.
more than a page, I might look at it, but keep in mind, every school is a little bit different. If we have thousands of applications, we're going to focus on the candidates that were able to get it onto a page because they followed the instructions, right? So really try your best to do that. In terms of being too vague or generic, like other high level stuff that I see people do, and we've talked about this before, I couldn't tell you how many essays I read every year where the first line is, oh, I'm really excited to be applying in an MBA program at Vanderbilt, at UT Austin, at, Cal Berkeley. And what that was is that was the essay that they used for that program. They didn't edit it. They just copied it, pasted it, and I'll read that. That's a huge red flag for us because once that candidate, even if we like that candidate, would come up in an admissions committee, as soon as a faculty member, as soon as other people read that, they're going to say, well, look at the mistake that they made. And that's such an easy one to do. So just be sure that you're proofing it. Be sure that the school that you're applying to doesn't name another program or school in that essay. It sounds very like common sense, but you would be very surprised. Other mistakes is just a clear lack of research. And I mean, I don't think anyone here would fall into that category because you guys are going to these webinars, you guys are working with Tomi. So you guys are doing your research, but sometimes I'll see a candidate that applies that might think our program is a hybrid, part in person, part online. We're not, it's fully in person. So, just it has the research you've done. Is it accurate and is it reflective of our program? In terms of emphasizing professional success, to a certain extent, yeah. Are your goals realistic, right? If you only have maybe 1 to 2 years of experience and you think coming out of the program you're going to be a CFO or a CEO, that's a little lofty, right? Do you have an understanding what that market is that you're kind of leading into and heading into? That's pretty important too. And then the final bullet point here, failure to proofread. We I can overlook personally a couple of grammar mistakes or maybe a misspelled word here or there. That's not to say that you shouldn't have people proofread it. That's not to say that you shouldn't really be sure that you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's. However, if you misspell like Fisher, like Fischer, and when it's Fisher, mistakes like that are big and glaring are typically bad to do as well. But I typically just say, have a few people proofread it. Be sure that your punctuation is as best as it can be. Be sure that you're trying to spell all the words correctly. I can overlook a tiny mistake here or there, but if it's riddled with mistakes, example, you've clearly not proofread it or you just throw it together, that's bad too. So those are the big things that I would say in terms of very common mistakes to avoid.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure a lot of you were giggling when he said the essay starting from including Vanderbilt or UC Berkeley. It's actually a mistake that a lot of people make. You don't want to be that person. Like just think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you saw me, like if it's me, I'll just forget about it because I'm just like how like where do I start to defend myself from? Right. So you should think deeply, read it. Like read. There's nothing wrong in reading, continuously reading. So our last slide is on tips for success. I'll talk a little bit about like a Titan program that we're having, and we'll open the floodgates for question and answers. Now, there is no shortcut to success. The only way you can be successful is if you start early and you continue to iterate. That's the only way, right? When people just come and say, oh, I have 24 hours to do something, like, how good do you think you are that you're going to be able to do it in 24 hours? Except if your core work, something you've been doing for the last 10 years, is writing essays, then maybe you can come up with something in 24 hours. But this is not your core work. So you need to start on time, start early. And I know a couple of you are still saying, oh, well, I'm not taking my GMAT or my GRE till like end of November. Even if you're not taking it till end of November, how does your GRE or your GMAT affect your essay? You have like I don't see the relationship. There are two individual aspects of your application. So start writing it now. Do you want to start writing your essay once you have your test score and then you're panicking, you're rushing? You don't want that to happen, right? You want to have enough time to actually write this essay. So you need to start early. You need to seek feedback, right? And that's why Titanial Consulting is here. And we'll be talking about our program in a bit. Now, one thing that I did not really mention is there's an additional essay that is included in the Fisher MBA application, also in other schools. Now, you all are really very different. And no matter how exciting your story is, a lot of you have certain gaps in your profile. The additional essay is an opportunity to explain those gaps. Did you have a very low undergraduate GPA? Explain it. When I mean explain, this is not a part to give excuses. It's more of saying that, okay, I know I have this low GPA, but I've done these following things to prove that I'm actually ready for the program. Oh, if you check the profile of the school and the average MBA candidate is 26 years old entry, or the average years of experience is 5, and you have 10, you have 12, you need to be able to explain. So why not an executive MBA? Why a full-time MBA? You need to be able to explain those things specifically. So there are some candidates that I see that they don't include additional essays, and I see them, they have like first class, great test score, like you're 25 years of experience, 4 years. I'm like, okay, like really, what else does the person want to include? But there are some people that their profile has a lot of holes and they're still not explaining it. So you need to be able to explain that, right? So you need to be able to include an additional essay every time you're submitting your essays. So before I open it up to Q&A, in fact, Q&A is open already, so include your questions in the chat box as you would wish. I would like to talk to you about a Titanial Consulting Bootcamp. So we started the Admit MBA Bootcamp, and we're having our third cohort start the first week of November. Now, this is our last cohort for the year and for the entire admission session. We do not take round 3 clients, and we're not doing coaching for round 3. So this November session is going to be from the entire, it's 5 weeks, from the first week of November to the first Saturday to the last Saturday of November. And it covers over, I would say, 11 to 12 hours of intense coaching of all of the anchors of your MBA application, from networking to resume to recommendation letters to essays to interviews to thinking through your stories and brainstorming. So if you're interested in the MBA Admit Bootcamp, please register for our MBA Admit Bootcamp. The link has been included in the chat. It's the last one for the year and the last one for this entire cycle. So there's no more admissions, anything after this last November cycle for the bootcamp. I know a couple of you have registered, but I'm sure you're wondering, oh, well, I want to start when I take my exams. I still don't see how it's, I mean, I get their individual part, I get the correlation, but I don't see how one has to go before the other, right? So it's better that you are well prepared, putting together your application, and you're also practicing for your exam. Then we are also offering a free profile evaluation. So if you want us to evaluate your profile, you want to speak to a consultant or speak to a member of the Titanial Consulting team, we're offering free 20-minute consultation. That link will also be included in the chat. Please, you can reach out to us, schedule the free consultation, and we'll be happy to speak with you. Now, we have a lot of free resources, from the school analysis sheet that includes like a list of like, I think 100 MBA programs in the United States, email address of the AdCom, links to essays. We have like the free resume template. We have like a tracker. So if you want any of those things, there's also a link for the MBA free resources that we are offering. Now, that being said, we're opening it up to questions. So do we have anybody that wants to ask any questions?
Yeah. And while they type those out, Tommy, can I mention
Yeah.
our Fisher fee waiver that we're going to offer candidates here
Yes,
too?
I don't know how I forgot that. Yes, Dan,
That's
please
totally
mention
fine.
it.
No, that's totally
Yeah.
fine. I wanted to mention it because I know that we're close to time. I'm good for, going over a few
Yeah.
minutes here, but I
Yeah.
wanted to mention quickly too. So and I've emailed this and it might be sent in an email, but if not, I wanted to mention it here as well. So as part of me being here and learning a little bit more about the Fisher College of Business and what our full-time MBA program can offer you as well, let me double check the code really quick, and I'm going to go into my email. But while I grab the code, I'm going to type it out into the chat here. But this is going to waive our Fisher application fee, which is normally $70 for international students. Now, the caveat with this is it does have an expiration date. So the code is going to be Titan 2024, and I just threw that into the chat. It is case sensitive. But that being said, if you have not yet submitted your application already, using this code is going to waive that fee. However, it's only valid until November 1st, so about the next 2-ish weeks. You can use it as many times as you want. It's not limited to one use, meaning if you wanted to apply to our Master of Accounting and our full-time MBA, you could do that with the same code, just using it twice. Now, it does expire coming up soon, so it's really just for those of you that have not yet submitted an application. Really, between now and November 1st, that code's going to be valid, but that's our gift for you guys for showing up and being here. So, but yeah, I wanted to mention that quickly, Tomi. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan, for mentioning that. I don't know how I slipped that. And then we would also be sending the details of the code to your email. So if you didn't get that, it's Titan 2024. You have to sometime in November to submit your application. So I think it's a very, very huge opportunity for you. So we'd like you to take it. Caroline, you have a question.
Yes, I do have a question. Thank you, Tomi. Thank you, Dan, for this very insightful session. So first things first, I'd like to say I applied to Fisher in round 1, and I'm really excited to be joining an MBA with Fisher. But I have a question. So I networked with an alumni, or rather a current Fisher student, and we had like the same background and also like the same concentration. And that was why I reached out to her and spoke to her. And from there, I was able to actually clearly define my own goals. But I wanted to ask, for adventure, when I join an MBA program, and yes, I have a definitive goal, but then I attend classes and I think I want to pivot because of, I have attended classes and I'm seeing new concentrations. Is that possible? Or if I say, okay, I want to have a marketing concentration during my application, that is what I have to do during the program.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and that happens all the time. I think for us at Fisher, if you started our program, let's say the example is consulting, right? We see this all the time. Hey, I really, really want to get into consulting. They talk about it in their essay, they show up, they do that, but then they get into the program and they maybe want to do marketing or they maybe want to do supply chain. That's totally fine. However, I would just say, having an idea of what it is that you want to do entering the program is super important. If the idea changes later, that happens. That's life. And I think that happens in all of the cohorts that we see. But that you're not locked into anything. If you start off and let's just say really want to do marketing in the marketing academy, but then later you want to do supply chain, you absolutely can. The best advice that I would give you, it wouldn't really be for an admissions person. It would be like working with your academic advisor and faculty to let them know immediately, because you want to be sure if midway through the program you thought you were going to do blank and now you're going to do something completely else. They might have tips in terms of electives to take or other things that you should be thinking of, clubs to join. So it's totally fine. At time of application, just do the best job explaining what it is that you want to do at that point in time when you apply. If it changes later, it changes later, but it would be more like working with your advisor and faculty compared to like an admissions thing.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan. Thank you.
Yeah.
Victoria.
Hi, good evening, and good evening, Dan.
Yeah.
So I applied for round 1 and I already submitted my application. I also want to know if there's any advice you have for reflecting on my application and also for preparing for the next steps, such as the interviews.
Yeah. So if you've already submitted your app, really at this point, you're not able to necessarily go back in and edit it. However, if that is the case, we do have an application processing team, and I could connect you if there's anything that you wanted to edit. But if you're just reflecting on them and preparing for next steps, what I would suggest, if you haven't done the video interview yet, look at that. Maybe reread the essays, because I know that just, if selected for an interview, we're going to ask you a lot about what you wrote about in the essays. So just rereading that, becoming more familiar with your story, doing some behavioral based interview questions as practice is what I would recommend there. But really, if you've clicked the submit button, at this point, we've got your materials. If you would like to change them before we review them, we can. We don't really advertise that. We could. We would just have to connect you to the right people and open it back up. But otherwise, it's just familiarizing yourself with your story and mentally preparing for the next steps. And the biggest advice I would give is just checking your email, right? I think that it's a very, very easy thing to forget to do, but sometimes candidates will work very hard, go ahead and submit the application, and then just completely check out, maybe take a 2-week vacation, maybe say, hey, I've done the hard part. They'll reach out to me, but don't forget to check your email. Sometimes we need stuff. Sometimes you're invited that way. And regularly, I'll see candidates that are super responsive up until we have everything, and then they're not super responsive after that. So just be sure that you're doing that as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Dan, what you mentioned. Thanks, Victoria. Dan, what you mentioned about checking your email is so funny. On a
Yeah.
very unrelated note, I've had 2 people reach out to me and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Tommy. I got to Microsoft interview. I didn't see it." I'm like, what am I supposed to do about that? And that's it.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was gone. Like 2 Nigerians. What do you mean? What do you mean you didn't see it? Like, I'm so confused. Like, what are you doing with your eyes? Anyways, so we have Ayomide asked the question. I'll come to you, Timileyin. What are the thoughts on using the optional essay to explain low test scores? Do you think it makes one come off as not wanting to take responsibility for their actions, or do you think it's better not to talk about it and rather emphasize on one's strengths? I think it's okay to call it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay to call it out, to say that, oh, I can see that this test score is lower than the average test score for this class. You can now talk about how you take full responsibility for that. And then you say, however, these are the things that you are doing to improve that. Or these are also the things that you actually have done that shows that despite you having this low test score, you actually have the right quantitative and qualitative capabilities to survive the MBA program. So this is where you will say, oh, I'm taking another test in about 2 weeks or in 3 weeks, and I'll be sending that over to the school. Or I'm a CFA charter holder. I'm a CPA for my country. I have these specific, like, relevant qualifications that actually show that I have very strong quantitative experience and capabilities. Yes, so this is not giving excuses. This is you calling it out. It's good for you to call it out. It shows self-awareness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree. And to Tomi's point, it's fine if you call it out, but to her point, that's when you could talk about maybe a retest. And sometimes there are issues at a testing center, right? What I would say I would avoid there, because I think Tomi hit upon everything that I would recommend. What I would avoid there is saying, hey, I didn't do well on this exam because I don't think it's a good measure of success, or I don't put value in the test and I just did it. You don't want to use this as an opportunity, because I read this time and time again. Hey, I didn't do well on this test because it doesn't measure skill and it doesn't really show you. So I didn't take it seriously. And that's what I did. You might want to say, hey, I could have studied a little bit more, or, there might have been an issue at my testing center, or, hey, I plan on taking it again. And this is just what happened. At the end of the day, I think that Tomi brought up a really good point. We don't want to read excuses, but sometimes there are relevant explanations to things, not necessarily calling them excuses, but sometimes maybe it's just being honest. Hey, I didn't study well enough, or I wasn't as prepared as I thought I was, but I scored what I did and I plan on fixing it and retaking it in the future. It's a good opportunity to address it, especially things like low GPA. Hey, maybe I wasn't prepared for college, but then later I improved. Maybe if you didn't score a great total score on the GRE, hey, I spent a little bit too much time preparing for the quant section and I struggled on the verbal. Like, you could tell us things like that, and I think that's helpful. So
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Timileyin, I'm so sorry we're running a little bit over. But I think we'll have just this question. Timileyin? Yeah.
Hello, thank you very much for giving me the audience. Can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Yeah, so I want to ask, this might sound somehow, but how do I connect with an alumni? That's question one. And sorry, I've not really done my it was just recent I was able to join this court or whatever, this meeting. I'm grateful for that. But I just recently, so I've not really done much research. So when I was trying to join the link, right, I saw something like, which round are you applying for? I'm in round one. I'm seeing round one, round two, round three, right? And others are already talking about the same round. I applied for round one, but I don't know what that round also mean. Oh, sorry, have not done my research before now. Like I said, just recently I joined
Yeah,
this.
that's okay. Yeah, yeah. In terms of like rounds and in terms of what I would recommend, I'll kind of answer your question, the second part of your question at a high level. Typically, the sooner that you can apply, the better. Now, for Fisher's programs, we're a round-based program, meaning, we have a round deadline, then we have time to review those applications, then we release decisions. So, that being said, you just kind of align when you want to hear back with the round that you apply. Broadly speaking, for all MBA programs, every MBA, and I know many people in the Big Ten, I know many people in the Power, top 20 MBA full-time programs. I've never heard any advice that goes against the sooner that you can apply, the better. Generally speaking, that's what every school is going to tell you. So when looking at rounds and differences, see if you can get into the earlier rounds. That's exactly what I would recommend. And then forgive me, what was the first part of your question again?
He was asking
Um,
about connecting with alums.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
the best way that I would to say to connect with alums, and I mean, this is just my opinion, and it typically works with our alums. I would go onto LinkedIn and I would just kind of sort by like, full-time MBA alumni, Ohio State. That's going to pull up a big, big encompassing list. What I would always suggest when reaching out to an alum, I think what I would recommend is finding them on LinkedIn and finding somebody that shares, like there maybe work at a company that you want to work at. They maybe come from a background that's similar to you, because you're going to want to make that message personal when you reach out. This is what I would really recommend. You don't want to reach out and just say, hey, I saw that you were an alumni to the program and I would love to chat. Can you set up time? You want to say something like, hey, I noticed that you're an alumni of the program. It looks like we might have studied at the same undergrad. It looks like we might have majored in the same thing. Or you're working at a company that is my dream company and I would really want to work at. You want to provide them like more information about yourself in that relationship. They're going to be more inclined to help you than to just say, hey, I'm a prospective student, will you please chat with me? You want to make it more personal than that, because then they're going to feel more necessary to respond to you, and they'll know that like opens the door for a conversation, right? Oh, we're both from West Africa, or we both studied accounting, or I work at Microsoft and you really want to work at Microsoft, so we can connect about that. That's what I would recommend.
Yes, and in addition to that, something that I always tell people is you don't add somebody on LinkedIn without adding a note. Like, except if the person is your family member, your
Yes.
parent, or your sibling. If you don't add a note, me personally, I don't accept people. Like, you need to add a note. Like, even if it's somebody that you have spoken to a couple of times, let's say, oh, hi, Caroline. This is Tommy. We have spoken a few times. I would like to connect. Just adding somebody on LinkedIn without adding a note, I don't even respond to that at all, because it doesn't show seriousness. It doesn't show you doing any research at all. And while I understand that you might not have done any research, it's up to you to do that research, right? As an MBA, it's up to you to stay on top of your game. So please do not reach out to any alum without adding a short note on LinkedIn. If you don't add a short note, I don't even I have I have a lot of MBA alums, and when they say, oh, people reach out, I said, don't accept anybody that if a person cannot be from me, don't accept anybody that did not add a note. Like that doesn't show any level of seriousness at all. So you must always add a note. Now we need to quickly wrap up. 1 more minute. What's your advice for someone's high undergraduate with a high undergraduate GPA, high test scores? What do you mean by high undergraduate GPA? What do you mean by high test scores? Right? How do you qualify high test scores? So I think Caroline has responded with use the link to book a free profile evaluation. And then what I would say is 2 years of work experience as at now, or as at when you are starting. So if when you are starting next year, you have 3 years of work experience as an international student, I think that is good, because a lot of the companies that actually do hire international students require 3 years of work experience from you. But if you're saying you're having 2 years as at when you are starting, now different schools have different opinions about that. But I always think about it from an international student perspective. What will make you very attractive to employers will be you having at least 3 years of work experience. But if you have 2 years now, and then by September next year, when you're starting school, you have 3 years, I think you're fine. Then Dan, you wanted to say something?
No, I was just
No,
going to
no, no,
say
no.
I was going to say I totally agree with that. 2 years,
Yeah,
3 years, and keep in mind it's really from the time the program would begin too. I think that work
yeah,
experience is a super important thing, but
yeah.
if you graduated and you're like, oh, I don't have 2 years yet, it's really 2 years from the start point, not from the point that you apply. So
Yes.
Tommy's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it's from your start point, yes. Flora, you can include your question in the chat box because we're already over time. Or you can send your questions via email. So thank you all so much for joining this session. Thank you, Dan, for all of the great insights that
Yeah.
you have shared with us today. You'll be getting a link to the recording of the video by tomorrow. And for those that have attended, because I have the list of those that have attended specifically, you'll be getting a link to the application fee waiver so you can apply. And please also register for the boot camp if you're interested in it. It's the last one. Would not be taking anybody in December for any boot camp of any sort. And if you would like to speak to a consultant or a member of the team, please fill the free profile evaluation link. And also, Flora, I'm waiting for your question. I'll be here for a few more minutes. But for every other person, I will say enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a very great week ahead. Thank you all so much. Thank you so much, Dan. We appreciate your
Yeah.
presence.
Oh, absolutely. And thanks so much for having me. I'll probably go ahead and log off. But I did throw my email into the chat here. I know that we went
Yeah.
a little bit over on time.
Yeah.
If you guys have any questions that maybe, hey, we didn't have time for, or maybe you don't feel comfortable asking them in front of the large group, totally understand it.
Mhm.
Just go ahead and email me. I will be back in the office on Monday. So I'll be responding to emails then. But
Mhm.
really appreciate being here. Use
Mhm.
that waiver code. I really appreciate the invitation here. It's always a pleasure, Tommy. So thanks so much for having me. I'll go ahead and log off here, but I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. All right. Bye bye.
Bye.